Good morning and welcome. I'm Reverend Susan Francis, the Assistant Minister here at UCE. I am pleased to welcome back Reverend Karen Gustafson, our interim minister. Whether the Unitarian Church of Evanston is your spiritual home or you are seeking comfort and connection in uncertain times, we are glad you are here. We are an inclusive and welcoming community seeking truth in love and striving to nurture the human spirit for a world made whole. We are guided by our principles and values, which remind us in every moment and through every challenge that each of us is worthy of love and that we are all connected through the vast and beautiful web of existence. Together, let us remember our kinship with one another, and may we hold one another in heart and mind with tenderness and careful attention. If you are online, you may find out more about us in the Show More section of the YouTube live stream, including the order of service and connections to religious education and how to get added to our email newsletter list. If you are visiting in person, there's a welcome table and you are invited to sign up for the email newsletter list as well. For those of you also in the building, there's a PDF order of service, and there's a QR code on the table sign in the sanctuary that will give you access to that PDF on your phone or iPad. A few announcements. The Serendipity Auction is impressed and amazed at all the creative, talented, thoughtful, and generous donations that have already been made and are in formation. Check out the auction website page. The link is in the newsletter. Our goals for this year's auction are to include donations that reflect our UU values and principles. We also want to create multi-generational opportunities, both in donation offerings and in the auction week celebrations. And our third goal is to involve new members. If you are interested or have questions, please stop by the auction table after the service during our kinship time. Or if you are attending virtually, go to the UCE website and scroll down on the homepage to see how to get in touch. Our all-church Zoom gatherings continue on the second and fourth Wednesdays at 5:30. Our next one is on October 27th. You are invited to join our Intro to UU class this afternoon at 3 p.m. It will be offered online, and the link is in the newsletter. We'll have our Journey Toward Membership classes on November 2nd and 3rd. After the service today, our All Ages Faith Formation Hour will feature our Fair Trade team. They have stations set up around the sanctuary, and childcare is available in the nursery for little ones in the lower level in room 11. And now I invite those at home to get their chalices ready as we join in beloved community.
We open with these words from the Reverend Scott Taylor. Come with your joy, your incurable curiosity, your hunger for hope. Bring to your broken heart, your cracked confidence, your ruptured relationships. Let this, today, be a place of repair. May the words spoken become a webbing, weaving again a path back to wisdom, back to forgotten worth, back to a place of peace, now buried by all the striving, worry, and wounds. May the sound circling in this space sweep you up like a stream whose currents long to carry you home. And may the common breath so sweetly shared between us remind you that loneliness eventually lifts, that we are tethered more tightly than it sometimes seems, that together our hearts can mend and our world can be woven anew. Come, let us begin. Welcome to worship.
Thank you, Gregory. The Unitarian Church of Evanston sits on the traditional and current homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes, such as the Miami, Menominee, Ho-Chunk, Sac, and Fox, have and continue to call this area home. We name these in honor and respect for the land, all the animals and plants that have lived on and through the land, and all people who have been and remain a part of the earth. Our shared faith calls us to name these as one small effort toward greater accountability, deeper relationship, and mutuality with our ancestors and our descendants. Cheryl Mounts and Carla Williams light the chalice today and bring flowers in celebration of their 34 years together and also to celebrate their one-year wedding anniversary. As they light our chalice, please join in saying the words on the screen. May this flame we share remind us that every one of us can bring the light of love to the world. May the light of love illuminate the path of peace. May the path of peace be wide enough to hold us all. May we be brave enough to carry the flame. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in saying our words of covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please remain standing to join in our opening hymn 108, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. If you are at home, you are invited to sing out. If you are here in the building, you are invited to move your body and to hum and to say the words, but not to sing out.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Good morning. Kind of quiet today. Late night? Today's Time for All Ages is Enemy Pie by Derek Munson and illustrated by Tara Callahan King. And I forgot the clipper, Adam. I don't see it. Right in front of my face. I'm looking for it on the little shelf. Yes, it was. You got that right. Anyway, we'll get it. Okay. Yes, I know. It was a very late night. And an early morning. Anyway. All right, here we go. Enemy Pie. It should have been a perfect summer. My dad helped me build a tree house in our backyard. My sister was at camp for 3 whole weeks. And I was on the best baseball team in town. It should have been the perfect summer, but it wasn't. It was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood right next door to my best friend Stanley. I did not like Jeremy Ross. He He laughed at me when he struck me out in a baseball game. He had a party on his trampoline, and I wasn't even invited. My best friend Stanley was. Jeremy Ross was the one and only person on my enemy list. I never had an enemy list until he moved into the neighborhood. But as soon as he came along, I needed one. I hung it up in my treehouse, where Jeremy Ross was not allowed to go. Dad understood stuff like enemies. He told me that when he was my age, he had enemies too, but he knew of a way to get rid of them. I asked him to tell me how. Tell you how? I'll show you how, he said. He pulled a really old recipe book off of the kitchen shelf, and inside there was a worn-out scrap of paper with faded writing. Dad held it up and squinted. "Enemy pie," he said, satisfied. You may be wondering what exactly is in enemy pie. I was wondering too. But Dad said the recipe was so secret he wouldn't even tell me. I decided it must be magic. I begged him to tell me something, anything. "I will tell you this," he said. "Enemy pie is the fastest known way to get rid of enemies." Now, of course, this got my mind working. What kind of things, disgusting things, would I put into a pie for an enemy? I brought Dad some weeds from the garden, but he just shook his head. I brought him earthworms and rocks, but he didn't think he'd need those. I gave him the gum I'd been chewing on all morning. He gave it right back to me. I went out to play alone. I shot baskets until the ball got stuck on the roof. I threw a boomerang that never came back to me. And all the while, I listened to the sounds of my dad chopping and stirring and blending the ingredients of enemy pie. This could be a great summer after all. Enemy pie was going to be awful. I tried to imagine how terrible it must smell, or worse yet, what it would look like. But when I was in the backyard, I smelled something really, really good. And as far as I could tell, it was coming from our kitchen. I was a bit confused. I went in to ask Dad what was wrong. Enemy pie shouldn't smell this good. But Dad was smart. Occasionally dads are. If enemy pie smelled bad, he said, your enemy would never eat it. I could tell he'd made enemy pie before. The buzzer rang and Dad put on the oven mitts and pulled the pie out of the oven. It looked like plain old pie. It looked good enough to eat. I was catching on. But still, I wasn't really sure how this enemy pie worked. What exactly did it do to enemies? Maybe it made their hair fall out, or their breath stinky. Maybe it made bullies cry. I asked Dad, but he was no help. He wouldn't tell me a thing. But while the pie cooled, he filled me in on my job. He talked quietly. There's one part of enemy pie that I can't do. In order for it to work, you need to spend the day with your enemy. Yeah, even worse, you have to be nice to him. It's not easy, but that's the only way enemy pie can work. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Well, of course I was. It sounded horrible. It was scary, but it was worth a try. All I had to do was spend one day with Jeremy Ross. Then he'd be out of my hair for the rest of my life. I rode my bike to his house and knocked on the door. When Jeremy opened the door, he seemed surprised. He stood on the other side of the screen door and looked at me, waiting for me to say something. I was a little nervous. "Can you play?" I asked. He looked confused. "I'll go ask my mom," he said. He came back with his shoes in his hand. His mom walked around the corner to say hello. "Now you boys stay out of trouble," she said, smiling. So we rode bikes for a while and played on the trampoline. Then we made some water balloons and threw them at some girls, but we missed. Jeremy's mom made us lunch. After lunch, we went over to my house. It was strange, but I was kind of having fun. Yeah, with the enemy. He almost seemed nice. But of course, I couldn't tell Dad that since he worked so hard to make enemy pie. Jeremy Ross liked my basketball hoop. He said he wished he had a basketball hoop, but they didn't have room for one. I let him win a game, just to be nice. Jeremy Ross knew how to throw a boomerang. He threw it and it came right back to him. I threw it and it went over my house and into the backyard. When we climbed over the fence to find it, the first thing Jeremy noticed was my treehouse. My treehouse was my treehouse. I was the boss. If my sister wanted in, I didn't have to let her in. If my dad wanted in, I didn't have to let him in. And if Jeremy wanted in, "Can we go in it?" he asked. I knew he was going to ask me that, but he was the top person, the only person on my enemy list. And enemies aren't allowed in my treehouse. But he did teach me how to throw a boomerang, and he did have me over for lunch, and he did let me play on his trampoline. He wasn't being a very good enemy. "Okay," I said, "but hold on." I climbed up ahead of him and tore the enemy list off the wall. I had a checkerboard up and some cards in the treehouse, and we played games until my dad called us down for dinner. We pretended we didn't hear him, and when he came out to get us, we tried to hide from him, but somehow he found us. Dad made macaroni and cheese for dinner, my favorite. It was Jeremy's favorite too. Maybe Jeremy Ross wasn't so bad after all. I was beginning to think that maybe we should just forget about the enemy pie. But sure enough, after dinner, Dad brought out the pie. I watched as he cut the pie into 8 thick slices. "Dad," I said, "it sure is nice having a new friend in the neighborhood." I was trying to get his attention and trying to tell him that Jeremy Ross was no longer my enemy. But Dad only smiled and nodded. I think he thought I was pretending. Dad dished up 3 plates side by side with big pieces of pie and giant scoops of ice cream. He passed one to me and one to Jeremy. "Wow," Jeremy said, looking at that pie. "My dad never makes pies like this." It was at this point that I panicked. I didn't want Jeremy to eat enemy pie. He was my friend. I couldn't let him eat it. "Jeremy, don't eat it. It's bad pie. I think it's poisonous or something." Jeremy's fork stopped before reaching his mouth. He crumpled his eyebrows and looked at me a little funny. I felt relieved. I had saved his life. I was a hero. "If it's so bad," Jeremy said, "then why has your dad already eaten half of it?" I turned to look at my dad, and sure enough, he was eating enemy pie. "Good stuff," he mumbled with a mouthful. And that was all he said. I sat there watching them eat enemy pie for a few seconds. Dad was laughing, Jeremy was happily eating, and neither of them was losing any hair. It seemed safe enough, so I took a tiny taste. Enemy pie was delicious. After dessert, Jeremy rode his bike home. Oh, I missed a page, I'm sorry. Oh, no, I didn't. Sweet. I'm ahead of myself. Jeremy rode his bike home, but not before inviting me over to play on his trampoline in the morning. He said he'd teach me how to flip. And as for enemy pie, I still don't know how to make it. I still wonder if enemies really do hate it, or if their hair falls out, or if their breath turns stinky. But I don't know if I'll ever get an answer, because I just lost my best enemy. The end.
Each Sunday, we hold space for the joys and sorrows of those gathered together, honoring the struggles and the triumphs, the brokenness and wholeness that is woven into the human experience. If you have a joy or sorrow you would like spoken aloud, you can write it in the Joys or Sorrows book that lives in the back of the sanctuary before the service, or you can submit it ahead of time through the Google form found on our homepage of our website. It's in the yellow box on the right on the webpage. Or you can enter it into the live stream chat. These are the joys and sorrows that have been shared with us today. Kristen Lems shares, I'm glad to report that my half-sister had a gamma knife surgery on her brain lesions Thursday and is already able to email from home. We are cautiously optimistic. Sandra Robinson shares, my precious brother Danny Joe Robinson, age 67, died peacefully on Friday evening after a valiant fight for life. His children and wife were at his side, holding hands around him and singing Amazing Grace. My gratitude to all of you, my church community, for your loving support, healing thoughts, and prayers through these past several weeks. Dan was a kind, caring man who touched many lives with his music, his sense of humor, and his service to others. Stacy Knall and Rafael Hernandez Arias share that on October 20th, the Knall family remembered the departure of Steve Knall from among us. His immediate and extended family remembered him and thanked him for all he did for the family. His thoughts and consejos continue to illuminate our lives. We hold in our heart a friend of the congregation who shares that the sudden death of my father in January 2020 has made me aware of how absent he was in my life. And since then, I am struggling to carry those twin griefs. Amelia Ikes shares that my Uncle Tony passed away unexpectedly on Friday. He was born and raised in Winnetka and soared through his life like an eagle. This morning, our candles in front of the chalice are the candles from the installation yesterday when the Unitarian Universalist ministerial colleagues and the clergy from the interfaith community here in Evanston gave a blessing to Reverend Eileen during her installation. And the wonderful scarves that are behind the chancel are from a ritual we did at the installation about our shared ministry and moving forward. And I wanted to share with you those ritual items before I shared our last joy, which was written by Melanie Kitchener, who shares, "I am thrilled that Reverend Eileen has been installed as the UCE senior minister. I have been hoping for this day practically since my first visit at UCE in 2012 and am filled with joy now. Blessings, Reverend Eileen." If you have something on your heart this morning, you're invited forward to light a candle. In this sacred space, we hold our joys and sorrows, our concerns and our celebrations. Together we celebrate together and lessen the burdens of our grief. Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Hear this prayer from Becoming, a spiritual guide for navigating adulthood. Feel the earth beneath your feet as it supports you. Feel the love of this community as it surrounds and enfolds you. Feel your breath as it flows in and out of your body. Listen to your heartbeat. Listen to your heart. And how is it with your heart? Does your heart feel whole, shielded by intellect, cocooned by reason, closed to feeling? Or is it broken, fragile to the touch, brimming with the pain of loss? Or has your heart been broken and healed so many times that it now lies open to the world, knowing that true growth comes not without pain, that tears may wear down barriers, that we may carry the hearts of others even when our own is too heavy for us to bear? None of us has an unblemished heart, not one. For such perfection can be found only in death, and we who are alive still have much to heal. So let us give thanks for the broken places in our hearts and in our lives. For it is only through such brokenness that we may truly touch one another, and only through touching one another that the world may be healed. Let us give thanks for the brokenness that we share. Blessed be.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
As we say in our covenant each Sunday, service is our law. UCE is called by our mission, values, and principles to contribute to our community, to form accountable partnerships, and to express gratitude through giving. Today's offering will be shared with the Evanston North Shore NAACP, whose mission is to secure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights in order to eliminate race-based discrimination and ensure the health and well-being of all persons. If you are joining us here or from home, you may text to give and write the word offering to the number 312-584-9160. You may also mail in a check and make sure to indicate in the memo line if your check is for the shared offering, pledge, capital campaign, or some other giving, or you may give through our website. If you are in the building, wherever you are, if you have money for the collection plate, please raise your hand and the ushers will come around to collect. The ushers have pens and envelopes if you would like to identify your cash with your pledge or other giving, and there are always envelopes in the back by the Joys and Sorrows table for you to use before the service. Please give as generously as you are able, and may what you give bring you joy.
Our reading this morning comes from the Soul Matters packet of worship resources that comes to us each month relative to the worship theme. And this month it is relationship. And I was so taken with this very short reading that I looked up the author, and her name is Leslie Jameson, and she is an actress who plays patients for residents in residency programs. And so she acts out the symptoms of particular illnesses, and the physicians who treat her are rated according to a kind of an empathy scale. And so she knows a lot about empathy. So here's what she says. Empathy isn't just something that happens to us, a meteor shower of synapses firing across the brain. It's also a choice we make to pay attention, to extend ourselves. It's made of exertion, that dowdier cousin of impulse. Sometimes we care for another because we know we should or because it's asked for, but this doesn't make our caring hollow. The act of choosing simply means we've committed ourselves to a set of behaviors greater than the sum of our individual inclinations. This confession of effort chafes against the notion that empathy should always rise unbidden, that genuine means the same things as unwilled, that intentionality is the enemy of love. But I believe in intervention, or in intention, and I believe in work. So ends the reading. Wow. Oh, I can take this off. Well, last week, some of you, most of you, any of you might remember, Eileen spoke to you about covenant. As important as it is for us to know what we want to do together, it is equally important that we know and practice how we want to be together and strive toward this vision. She also quoted the late Angus H. MacLean, Universalist minister and shaper of religious education in our movement, and said, "The method is the message," meaning our values and purpose are fulfilled by the ways we are together. He said, "Such values as we are concerned with cannot be communicated except as they are set in operation, given life in the human relations in which teachers are taught and involved. Love exists when someone is loved. Freedom exists when relations worthy of that name govern communication and actions between persons." She referred to the Uce Covenant of Engagement, which specifies some of the ways that you want to be together, including to speak and listen with open hearts and open minds, to be gracious and understand our limits and those of others, to share and encourage others, to share responsibilities for the work within our walls, to practice curiosity, willingness to learn, resilience and perseverance, assuming best intentions. We can't say it enough times. And at the same time, we hold ourselves and one another accountable when we cause harm. We accept that we will all make mistakes, we will work to address them and move forward, and I would add, we make assumptions about others' intentions, which need to be repaired, even as our young person in today's story made assumptions about what it is that makes an enemy. These, she said, are good words to live by. Making hard decisions, engaging in difficult and important work, having uncomfortable conversations is where the rubber really hits the road with covenant. It does no good to have these good words on our wall if we do not incorporate those words into our hearts and minds and bodies. Difficult conversations will continue to arise as we do the work of living our values, of examining who we are and who we want to be in the context of Eileen's remarks. This was in relation to the work of the congregation. And of course, at best, it extends into our most intimate and complicated interpersonal encounters. It calls us to risk reconciliation. If our ordinary, everyday life experience proved satisfactory, and if it reliably generated positive feelings of fulfillment and well-being, there would be no need for covenants or for reconciliation. Human beings seek insight, solace, reassurance because something feels out of joint. We are not all that comfortable with life as it is. This is the predicament that religion tries to address. Life is precious, but so often it also proves to be unpleasant. What needs to happen to make things right? What indeed? Well, our Unitarian Universalist statement of principles implies at least that intentional living according to guided principles is its own path to a reconciled life. a means by which it might be achieved or at least glimpsed in this life. Our principles urge us to live in a fashion that harmonizes rather than clashes with the first principles of the universe, to be yielding, supple, flexible, humble, rather than obstinate, aggressive, demanding, and arrogant, as prescribed by such ancient sages as Lao Tzu. So this leaves us with the challenging, complicated enterprise of applying our covenants and our Unitarian Universalist principles to reconciliation in all of our human relationships. So one of the great gifts of being in late middle age, approaching elderhood, is that I have now had lots and lots of opportunities to find the healing power of reconciliation in my personal and professional life. So here are a few things that I observe. In the face of sin, ignorance, self-centeredness, fear, suffering, and death, it is easier to be reconciled with reasonable people who are mutually interested in the value of continuing relationship. But we need again and again to be creating opportunities for reconciliation where the odds for success are at best poor. 2, it is easier to achieve reconciliation when one or more of the parties involved is more invested in the relationship than in the particular outcome. But the effort is always as important as the outcome. 3, the right thing is often harder than we think, and more often is more than we want to take on. 4, great gains come only from great risk. 5, reconciliation is often not immediate. It takes time for the heart to catch up to the head. And 6, true reconciliation becomes redemptive when it extends over time. And now a true story, as you knew I would do. Once upon a time, there was a mother of 3, ages 8, 10, and 11. Divorced painfully but amicably some 6 years from the children's father, with whom she had a strong and supportive parental coalition. Enter new wife, some 10 years younger than the old wife, with no previous marriage or parenting experience. Together, the 3 decide in a business-like manner that the children should spend 1 year together with their father and new stepmother before they were invited to participate in the decision about where they would live, with one or the other parent who lived about 100 miles apart. The negotiations were civil, though the completely engaged and eager new stepmother was clearly leery about the old wife, who maintained that regardless of the number and marital status of parents involved, this was going to be, for richer or for poorer, for better, for worse, till death do us part, for everyone, and it would be best to make the most of it. And making the best of it proceeded reasonably well until the middle of their 8-year-old's intramural basketball season. The mother was present on game day. The whole family showed up for the game, after which it was agreed that the mother would take the would go for pizza with the basketball boy. Sometime during the dinner, the boy produced a flat brown paper bag. When queried about the contents, the boy confessed that it was the team photos. And indeed, in the bag, there were 2 photos of the team, one for each parent, and 2 portraits of the boy in his uniform, poised, no doubt, for a free throw, and 1 mom's button. There it was, the 3-inch disc, you know the kind, with the portrait to be sported by the moms, hovering on the sidelines, waiting to claim with pride some play or another and point to the star on her jacket. There was an awkward moment, and the boy pushed the button toward his mother and said, "Here, Mom, this is the mom's button, but don't tell Becky because I know she really wants it." He knew who his mother was, and he knew that there was something about this exchange that was not right. They both knew. And yet in the moment, all of the dreams of being an intact family bore down on both of them, and the mother picked up the button and pinned it on her coat. They didn't talk much after that. When they arrived at the place that was now the boy's home, the mother carefully removed the button from her jacket and went inside the house. The plan was that she would drop off the boy and return in a couple of hours to pick up the other children for a visit. Within earshot of the departing mother, the stepmother caught the boy in the dining room. "Did you get the pictures?" The excitement in her voice was palpable. The rustling of paper, and then, "Where's the mom's button?" "I gave it to Mom," he said. 2 broken-hearted women, heading in opposite directions. One sobbing, no doubt, in her bedroom, one sobbing in the car. In such moments, the need for reconciliation and even redemption looms large. The challenge of justice, equity, and compassion is not an ideal on a list of principles. The risk is immense, the stakes are high, the emotional load is almost too heavy to bear. "I'm his mother," cries the woman in the car. "Didn't I give him birth? Who does she think she is?" Who indeed? How about the mother who takes her son to practice and attends all the games? Who washes his uniform? And when asked by the other parents what brings her out on a night like this, says, that little blonde kid over there, I'm with him. "But I want to be that mother," cries the mother in the car. "I deserve that button." And yet, from some deep place inside of her, from some overarching sense of trust in the universe, a respect for the long view, she drives around the block 6 times, runs the errands needed to fill the space until the time of her expected return, composes her face, and re-enters the place that is her son's home, carrying the button. The boy meets her at the door. "Honey," she says, extending the button, "we both know that I'm your mom, and nothing is ever going to change that. But right now, while you're living here, Becky is really doing the mom job in her very own special way. One of those ways is that she's helping you to play basketball. She is taking you and she is picking you up and washing your uniform and watching your games with the other moms. And so I think that button really belongs to her." relief on the face of the child, whose moral development encompassed the sense that this was indeed the right thing, but was far from entertaining the mechanisms of his own capacity for reconciliation. There was no response by the newly acknowledged mom, not for many years. But the mother had rounded a bend on the high road that opened her heart and helped her to move in time toward a fully reconciled relationship that has provided their children with far more than their full share of parenting in all of its very best ways. About 10 years later, the older woman received a letter from the younger. We live in a culture, it said, in which many think that we should be enemies. I am so grateful that you refuse to accept that. Life is too short and our children are too important to subject them to anything less than models of adults who can find ways to allow them to feel loved in all the ways possible. Thank you for all of the ways that you helped that to happen. Thank you especially for the moms button. This, of course, is only a tiny excerpt of a much larger story that now spans over 3 decades. I am not suggesting here that we begin by taking on the most challenging conflicts of our lives in this manner. But tiny moments, the kind that present themselves in countless less dramatic ways every day, that contain the essence of true reconciliation. We, of course, can improve the odds by considering my earlier observations that in the face of sin, ignorance, self-centeredness, fear, suffering, and death, it's easier to be reconciled with reasonable people who are mutually interested in the value of continuing relationship. But we need again and again to be creating opportunities for reconciliation where the odds for success are at best poor. It is easier to achieve reconciliation when one or more of the parties involved is more invested in the relationship than in the particular outcome. But the effort is always as important as the outcome. The right thing is often harder than we think, and more often more than we want to take on. Great gains can result from great risk. Reconciliation is often not immediate. It takes time for the heart to catch up to the head. True reconciliation becomes redemptive when it extends over time. I am personally willing to entertain the possibility of some higher creative force in the universe. But I also think that I contribute more wholesomely to this earthly enterprise when I think it's all up to us. Not me, mind you, to us. All of us, risking rejection, facing our fears, engaging our covenants in the face of a culture that seems to want to turn every difference into something irreconcilable. Your current and ongoing efforts as a congregation to be clear about your covenant of engagement is a valiant one. It is a way of making more tangible the overarching covenant called for in our Unitarian Universalist statement of principles. Religious communities of all kinds are the best laboratories for building emotional, spiritual, relational skills that equip us to risk a fuller engagement in every aspect of human life and society. Here, In this brave attempt at beloved community is where the risk of reconciliation is tempered by the shared aspiration and by embraced imperfection. It's not always about being nicer, but being more kind in our honesty, more generous in our judgment, as concerned about relationship as about outcome. Reconciliation is not about giving up or giving in, about winning or losing. It's about understanding the trade-offs that create openings for a more just and loving future. On a personal note, I have been reading a book lately called The Wild Edge of Sorrow by psychologist Francis Weller. It's about living in the tension between grief and gratitude. I stand here today on the edge, on that edge. It has been such a privilege to serve this congregation. You are on such a promising path. Don't screw it up. So now, before extinguishing our chalice, I have somebody gave me something I was supposed to read, and speaking of not screwing it up, oh, Susan's gonna do it. Yay!
Before we extinguish our chalice, I want to invite you into our Faith Formation Hour. All activities for today's Social Justice Faith Formation Hour will be held in the sanctuary, and October is Fair Trade Month, and so that is our focus. Please enjoy each other's company for just like 5 minutes for some kinship time. And we're going to set up the stations right after the benediction, and we will move right into starting with a 5-minute video, followed by 10 minutes at each station. And so you can pick where you want to start and rotate around the sanctuary. Please stay and enjoy a fun way to learn about fair trade in a way that it is designed for all ages to participate. As Cheryl and Carla extinguish the chalice, please join in saying the words on the screen. Though the flame is extinguished, we carry with us the warmth of community, the light of truth, and the fire of commitment until we are together again. Our closing hymn is 1057, Go Lift It Up. Again, if you are at home, please sing out loudly. And if you are here in person, move your body or hum or say the words.
Peace.
now may the peace which passes understanding, which the world can neither give nor take away, and the love of this beloved community be and abide with you all. Go in peace.